So today we're interviewing a number of founders from across Fifth Wall's very diverse portfolio about a number of the challenges and obstacles they faced in building their companies. Being an entrepreneur requires you to have a risk tolerance that many people would see as extreme. We wanted to find out from our founders, where did that extremeness come from? What lit that flame in them, in their lives, in their personality, in their habits to make them who they are as an entrepreneur?
I have a really strong belief that I have a skill set and an ability to rally people that can help solve a problem that really matters to me and to the world, and that's what we're all about.
I think I am extremely resilient. I think I'm not afraid of the unknown. If I was, I probably wouldn't be an entrepreneur. I'm not afraid of no, right? Like coming from commercial real estate as a former broker, all you hear is no. You start to love no, because every no I hear, I know I'm closer to a yes.
I am really stubborn. I mean, various people have told me that I'm relentless. If I get focused on a problem that hasn't been solved, I become determined, just literally by tuning everything else out. And the more that people tell me that it's too hard or unsolvable, it's like the more excited I get about solving it.
It's probably my curiosity. I'm very interested in naturally interested in hard technical problems.
One thing that led me to pursue entrepreneurship, I think, is curiosity. So I wasn't thinking that I'll be an entrepreneur, but I was just very curious. And part of the curiosity, I think, came from being comfortable with downsides. I'm just curious to keep solving giant problems, and making a difference.
For some reason, when I was really young, I just had this really deep hunger for responsibility, kind of in a bit of a, superhero need to save the world. I really get a lot of satisfaction from being entrusted with, real meaningful responsibility. So I really get energy from that, versus, feeling overwhelmed by that.
I heard a lot of there is curiosity. Curiosity is one of the most consistent and common traits across all entrepreneurs. But for a lot of entrepreneurs, being an outlier amongst their peers gave them a perspective, gave them a lens on the world that let them see things differently and see the opportunity that became the company they created.
I'm definitely someone that has never fully fit in the sense that when I was growing up in southern Spain in the 80s and 90s, I was the only kid that came from living in Africa, was Black, was a huge nerd. And although I had a great time and tons of friends, I never truly felt like my experience was the same experience as other people. And that has negatives, but it also has positives, because at a very early age, you accept, I'm different, and I do some things differently, and other people are just going to have to accept that. That helps you look at things. For example, when I was in college and I was thinking about starting my first company, it was definitely not what everyone else was doing. No one was doing that in Spain at the time. But I already had, several years of history of I was never going to fit in anyway, so I might as well try and do things my way.
I'm really, really independent, and I don't care that much about the opinions of others and what the conventional wisdom is. And I've really just always listened to my own gut instincts and had a strong feeling and conviction about what I should be doing, even if it's not what everyone else is doing.
Everyone says that to build a successful company, you need to have that company consume you, where it's all you do. But that's actually not true. And when you talk to founders, many of them have habits and hobbies and pursuits that give them distance from what it is they're building, and that distance creates value.
When I used to go on bike rides, this was a great opportunity because I would have a 3 or 4 hour window to think about stuff. The first hour, you're just sort of pushing through physical pain. The second hour, you're sort of mentally organizing tasks that you have to get done that week or that month. It's only when you get to the third hour or so of clarity that you start to think about bigger picture problems, right?
I was a national champion rower and then road cyclist, so I'd ride my bike down mountains at 60 miles an hour, not get freaked out. So I guess I get bored real easily maybe. And so you need to take risks. I mean, I think that's an inherent kind of entrepreneurial kind of low neuroticism trait.
I grew up surfing competitively. It's my sport. It's like the thing that I'd rather do than most things. There's some analogies to running a business, right? Because you have variables that you can control and ones you can't control. I can control what I do on a surfboard. I can't control the wind. I can't control the swell direction. I can't control how deep the water is. And as a surfer, you're constantly looking at all these things all the time to figure out where should you paddle to catch that wave? Are you too far in or too far out? What's underneath you? Is it a shark? Is it a fish? Like, your senses have to be so high all the time. And it's almost like it's like a liquid chessboard a little bit. And, it's similar to, building a business. Markets change, products change, investors change. What your customers want changes.
My form of meditation is surfing. I'm probably the worst surfer in the water at any given time in the California Ocean, but also the one having the most fun.
And those sides of your personality, it's not just athletics, it's not just sports, it's arts, it's so many things that make you a diverse, complete person that you bring to your work, you bring to your role as an entrepreneur. And that's where so much of the power of being new and different and seeing the world differently, it gives you that energy, it charges you in a way that many entrepreneurs use to fuel their fire.
I think it's really important as an entrepreneur to have something that's just for you, that you're not even, doing something that's competitive or you're trying to make money from doing it. And for me, that's actually classical music. This summer before senior year of college, when everyone was out getting internships, I decided that I would learn the most that summer by being a street musician. So I played my flute on the streets of Oxford. I actually made a pretty good living for myself and saved a bunch of money and supported myself. I learned a lot about human psychology. That's one thing I talked about at interviews. I learned how to feed off of a crowd. And also importantly for me, it helped me kind of get over a lot of stage fright that I might have and public presence, and just helped me feel more confident in front of large groups of people. I still play the piano. I try to do it daily. I play with my son and my husband, and music is just some part of my life that is, just for me and just for my family and for no one else.
I would say I'm a bit of a gamer. I like gaming. I don't know how many gamers, or maybe people weren't surprised by that. But I do love, gaming. It was something that, I've been doing since I was a kid. It's actually what got me into programming in the first place.
I'm a huge comic book fanatic, to the point of collecting more comic books that my wife allows me to have in my house right now.
In the early days, meditation was the thing that saved me when I would have a really impossible day, or we'd get terrible news about something, or I'd feel overwhelmed and lonely. That was something that was really helpful.
Yeah, so my normal background for Zoom is Burning Man, which here I can switch it to that. I used to be this kind of emotionless robot engineer. And if you meet me, that might be your first impression. So that part would be not surprising. And then I met my wife and I joined YPO, and sort of I've gone through this kind of evolution of kind of emotion, like being in touch with my emotions, maybe would be like the best way to put it. And going to Burning Man and just like dancing a lot and like being kind of trying to really explore that emotional or spiritual, or however you want to phrase it, kind of headspace, I think is not something I would have even expected in myself 10, 15 years ago. I just thought, focus on the math and like the pure kind of objective world. And that's what's most important. But, realizing those two things are actually quite inseparable, or can be improved by focusing on each other.
But what connects us all as founders? Is there one thing, is there one through line in our personalities that makes us all similar?
There are lots of types of entrepreneurs, but two big buckets that I think about are people who are super risk seeking all the time and who are more serial entrepreneurs, and they're just going to start company after company after company and figure out what's going to work. And then there are entrepreneurs who start something because they feel that it needs to exist.
Well, I think in my mind, at least the ones that I've seen the successful founders have, is deep resilience, which comes from two places. One is accepting the current situation and seeing it for what it is. And second is, in the face of that situation, still, keeping alive the vision of what you're here for and what you want to go build. And no matter how hard it gets, finding a way to get there. So that's how I think about it.
I think a key attribute of many entrepreneurs, including myself, is pure tenacity. You have to be creative and you have to be able to imagine a world that's different than the world you live in today. And you can't be afraid of the potential of failure in trying to achieve a vision of the world that's really different.
I'd say it's blind conviction, right? It's this sense of belief that a idea that you're working on, or the mission that you're building your company to address, is one that has innate value that's really, really high.
A founder is someone that can take pain and turn it into motivation. You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that is going to feel bad, and it should feel bad at every stage of the way. And you just have to take that as a positive. Take that as, okay, that is just another opportunity to overcome another problem and feel good about it later.
The thing that makes somebody a founder is that I think they're really inherently individualistic. You have to have a clear opinion about what the future can look like that's really different than today.
Tenacity and aggressiveness and boldness, those are all great, and those are traits of entrepreneurs. But what about being a little bit naive or being a little bit overly optimistic? Is that a positive or a negative as an entrepreneur?
The best founders, I think, are like almost irrationally optimistic. The ones that create like multi-decade businesses, or at least decade-long businesses that end up growing a huge scale, billions of revenue, they have this almost irrational optimism, where to the point where people around them are like, dude, you're out of your mind.
Founders are naive, and they use it as a superpower, right? Most people they're naive about something, and then others point it out, and it just makes them feel embarrassed or stupid, and then they're sheepish and don't do stuff. But founders who are naive about like why the problem they're solving, can't be solved. Like there's a whole bunch of people telling like, I've got way more experience than you, and I've, tried to solve this and I haven't. Like I'm experienced. I'm not as naive as you are. And they say that like it's detrimental, and I actually think it's a secret weapon. And I think all founders to a degree are naive about the problem they're trying to solve, and that's what makes them effective.
Many people associate founders with lots of optimism and the vision and future, which is absolutely true. I think in my case as well, I believe in a much better world and believe in my capacity to go create that. But one of the things that I think I've realized is that in addition to doing that, is the idea of actually being in tune with your fears. That's really critical. And so being able to then understand that really well, define it, and then actually reconcile it and say, okay, what is the actual risk? So I was very in tune with like, what am I willing to lose? And when I would reconcile with that, I was willing to just shoot for the upside.
So when you hear about entrepreneurship, you think extreme, you think extremes. But I think what you heard from founders today is that it's not just about being extreme. It's about having a certain extremeness in your personality, but balancing it with routine and dimensions of your life and leveraging your friends, your family, your network in ways that make you a complete person. You need that completeness alongside being extreme to be a successful entrepreneur.